Grant decides he's going to go with consistency, and it's taken him all the way into the top 4 of the SCG Open here in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. So we'll see if he can climb his way to the finals.
We'll take a look here. Both players going over their sideboards in the deck list. McGuffee on your left, LaCombe on your right. Red-White Devotion versus Blue-White Control. LaCombe has just tied it up, so a third and final game in which McGuffee will be on the play. And while these players are kind of looking over sideboards yet again, we'll do the same thing. Blue-White Control Mage, that's you, Shaheen.
All right.
Your Blue-White Control Mage and Mr. McGuffee will be on the play this game. So what can he add in against Red-White Devotion?
All right, so Glare of Heresy is obviously a glaring sideboard card you need to put in. You have Elspeth Sun's Champion. That needs to come in as well. I've always been surprised of the one Elspeth in the main, one on the board, especially in a blue-white control deck where you can afford to play more of these blue-white cards. You know, you're not cluttered with black spells. Because Elspeth, there's not really a matchup I hate it against. It's not the greatest against Mono Black Devotion. It's not the greatest against super kind of... we've seen all these Underworld Connection style decks with black-green also, but it's good against everything else. You want it against the control decks, it's not too bad. It deals with Blood Baron on the other side where you can actually board out your verdicts and be able to kill Blood Baron still. And against these decks, it's just a great way to clog the board up. And minus, being burnt out, you can stabilize, slam Elspeth, and you'll be good to go. He's going to bring in Last Breath, obviously kills a lot of things. Blind Obedience isn't so bad. We were talking, when I was talking with Grant earlier, and I'm not a huge fan of Blind Obedience for a few reasons. One, drawing in multiples is miserable, especially when you're playing against an aggro deck, and that's what you board it in against. Two, there's not a heck of a lot that have haste nowadays. I mean, back in the days of Hellrider, back in the days when everyone was playing Thunderball Hellkite in these red mid-rangey decks, it was a little bit better, but if you're not playing against mono red, you're pretty much not going to see any haste. And if we look at Jared LaCombe's deck, even though he has red-white devotion, probably should be white-red devotion here. How many haste guys does he have? He has Ash Zealot, and that's probably...
He's got Ash Zealot, he's got
Stormbreath Dragon. Okay, so he's got the dragon as well. So this actually is a little bit more red than white that we've seen earlier. So he's got a few haste guys. So you're going to see Blind Obedience come in as well.
Sideboard here for LaCombe. He's got an Assemble the Legion. He has a Burning Earth, 3 copies of Chain of the Rocks, 4 Boros Charm, 2 Warlord's Helix, 2 Wear and Tear, a Chandra Power Master, and a Mizium Mortar. So he's playing against a control deck in which he is going to be the aggressor in this matchup, but he can play a little more mid-rangey style. So I like Boros Charm in this matchup, of course, to trump his Supreme Verdict and give you a little bit of reach. Also a big fan of Wear and Tear against a deck that you know has Detention Sphere. Assemble the Legion, also pretty good here. Not the end-all be-all due to Jace. And then last but certainly not least, just Chandra Pyromaster, because that can be a card advantage engine. Those little dings can add up, but it can actually let him keep up with cards from the blue-white control deck.
Yeah, you're going to see Stormbreath Dragon be an all-star in this matchup. He's not playing Doomblade, doesn't have Hero's Downfall, so he's going to be looking at the Stormbreath Dragon with, a little bit of sadness in his heart there, because basically it's Supreme Verdict, Elspeth, or Bust against that card.
And luckily for LaCombe, he's got some cards that you can certainly board out. Those 3 Mizium Mortars can certainly hit the bench. Chain of the Rocks in the main deck also can go bye-bye. Rilius Fury, a nice one of. I think that can go to the board as well. So he's got plenty of cards to sideboard out. Got some creatures he can probably cut too, depending on how he wants to do his setup here. But I love this Red-White Devotion deck, and I'm interested to see if it can actually take down Blue-White Control in a third and final game.
Yep, it's definitely a close matchup as we've seen. I think Aurelius Fury is actually a really sweet card. When it was printed, I was pretty afraid of it. The ability of silence attached to it. I've seen people have played silence before in constructed Magic in form of Orm's Chant and others in order to get final damage through, back in the day anyway. And Aurelius Fury has a fireball attached to it, so it's pretty good. It also allows you to tap down opposing creatures and get through. It's got a lot of modes on it that are pretty exciting. It's not a card I'd want 2 of, but as a 1 of, it can be one of those miracle cards that you can rip off the top later in the game.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk when that card came out, and when that card came out, there's a lot of people who are just like, wow, are you serious? Yep. You can put all this text on an X-Spell and this is okay? And it turns out the answer so far has been yes. I actually kind of expected that card to be a little bit more dominant in a format where we were actually seeing an X-Spell be quite good in Bonfire of the Damned.
Yeah.
But that's not the case, at least so far. I would like to see at some point this card get some play and wreak a little havoc.
Yeah, actually, even in Blue-White-Red, I've actually considered running a 1 copy in the control deck because it gives you opportunity to force through, spells if you want to. Aurelius Fury you for 1. All right. Aetherling. You can silence it. You can kill planeswalkers with it. Yeah, I think I'm gonna add one to my deck when I get home.
I like it.
Yeah, see, I like doing this whenever I'm on air. I always convince myself to play fringy cards.
All right.
So I apologize for those who played Wild Ricochet in my Blue White Red. It's definitely more funny than good. The problem with that card is that against a Thoughtseize deck, like you said, it's 1 mana versus 4. But after they see it once, like in your early hand, the jig is up. They know it's coming, the jig is up. So it's definitely not the same.
There will be no Wild Ricochet.
There'll be no Wild Ricochet. They know what's happening here. But pretty sweet against the old Sphinx of Revelation, getting to draw a bunch of cards for 4 mana. I digress. So this matchup, who's on the play?
It'll be McGuffee for game 3.
McGuffee's on the play. So that's pretty good. Pretty good. He needs to really save his counter magic and his celestial flares for Storm Breath Dragon. That is a card that will take him out of this game with extreme prejudice here because you're playing the colors that it is pro of for the most part.
Yeah. So, deck is going to be presented, and we are going to be underway here shortly. Again, if you guys are just joining us, Cedric Phillips, Shaheen Sarani starts the Games Open Series here in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. At SCG Live, hashtag SCGDAL for your tweets. As we are going to navigate our way through the semifinals, we'll make it through the finals as well, crown ourselves a Standard Open champion, as Shaheen mentioned. Then we'll have Legacy action beginning in round 3 all over the course of the day. So, going to be fun to see exactly what does take it down here in Dallas. I know that you are a big proponent of Stoneforge Mystic and Friends.
Yeah, definitely.
That's your weapon of choice next weekend in DC?
Yep, that's my shtick. It's one of those things where Flores was picking on me not too long ago. He's like, why don't you play a different deck? And then that same tournament was the last top 8 of the Invitational. And he's like, fine, play your dumb deck.
Yeah.
Play your Stoneforge.
Play your stupid Squire.
Play your Squire. All right, so we're underway. Actually, Mike Kohler says if Min would have named Garrick and not Xenagos, he would have died to a Xenagos. But the big topic was, do you name the last card in his 70 or his 60 card deck that kills you, or do you name the 4 of that pretty much kills you?
Yeah.
And I'm going to go with the 4 of.
The Garrick doesn't kill you immediately, but it'll kill you over the course of the game, which is exactly what did happen there.
Right.
He cycled Azorius Charm here from McGuffee, a couple just Temple of Triumphs on the side of LaCombe. So we're going to do a slow build here. The red-white devotion deck, is not the fastest deck in the world. It is capable of some explosive draws with Nykthos, but it's it's more of a mid-range deck than a hyper-aggressive mono-red deck.
Yeah, we've seen this kind of strategy ditch for the Sly deck that we've seen a lot of, or at least the more one-drop oriented red decks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because, if you're going to go aggro, they want to kill you right off the bat. But this deck has kind of like the mode of winning later in the game as well, and you get to play a sweet card like Boros Reckoner. The Sly deck, I'm surprised, still doesn't run it. 3 mana is just too much in the 18 land deck. So
yeah,
just too much.
Syncopate's going to take care of the Minotaur Wizard, so bye-bye Reckoner, and McGuffey's going to have to pass the turn back stuck on 3 lands.
Does McGuffey have a Dissolve? If he doesn't, I'm a big proponent of main phase drawing a card with Azorius Charm.
Mm-hmm.
I love main phasing my stuff when you have to.
Fanatic of Mogi,
he doesn't
boring
dissolve, so
4/2.
it will need a Dissolve. Wow.
I'm actually okay with letting that resolve, honestly.
I just need to hit land drop. So he's going to cycle Azorius Charm here, which kind of has a similar effect. But the scry on this, when you're stuck on land, is the only reason why I would counter it. You need to hit that 4th land drop when harder, and he does. So.
Yeah, and the reason I'm okay with not dissolving that is I'm perfectly fine with leaving dissolve up in case something like a Chandra comes in.
Yeah.
That you're actually kind of scared of. But Fanatic of Mogi, it deals 1 and it's a 4/2, but
right.
I think you can kind of work your way around that one creature.
Right. The only reason I would counter it is simply the fact of missing land drops. Because if let's say he scries at the bottom, then draws and misses a land drop, he's going to need a main phase Azorius Charm to have a chance at all to win this game.
Sure.
Being on 3 land. But Grant does hit his land off the cycle. Problem is he's going to take 5 here, and this will be dissolved.
Yeah, Storm Breath, and you see Jared's already ready.
It would have
actually get countered.
It would actually worked out fine though if he would have dissolved that because he's actually holding a Celestial Flare.
Sure.
So it would have been fine too, and he'd be a little bit higher life total. But yeah, it works out just fine because he does hit land. I'm just always afraid because I think if I choke on land, the game is pretty much over.
So if an X going to come across, going to put McGuffey down to 15. Looks like an untapped Hallowed Fountain, so McGuffey's going to go down to 13, and we'll see exactly what he's going to do this turn. Just pass it back.
Well, he does have Flare. He has Detention Sphere, and he has Sphinx's Revelation. So I think if he doesn't have another hasty creature, we're going to see a Celestial Flare dispatch this Mogus here in order to, salvage some life points. Life total is a resource of control players. It's something that aggro players don't really have. It's kind of like we have extra cards, because we have this that we can let dwindle and dwindle and dwindle, and then eventually deal with the problem at hand as long as you're not at 0. Something that another advantage to playing the slower decks.
See LaCombe taking a look at his hand here. We don't have a great look at it, but he's certainly got some options at his disposal. And you see that Fnatic Emoji that is in play as a 4-2, and it's going to start by attacking. Yes.
And he'll be met with a flare with Dissolve open as well. And this has to be a dead giveaway. Oh, he takes it.
Looks like he is going to take the damage, so he's going to go down to 9.
Takes it. And Celestial Flare is one of those cards where you can't really be too picky with it because once he gets a couple creatures out, he'll just sack the one that doesn't matter. So, no, I definitely would have Celestial Flared here. Maybe, oh, he's post-combat?
I think he's I think he's considering it.
Yeah, he did it before damage, probably.
Yeah.
There's no way to. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Yeah, I think he's realized the same thing. You can't be picky with your Diabolic Edicts. Let's be honest here.
Yeah, if there's something in play, you got to get it out of play.
Exactly.
2 mana. There's a Burning Tree Emissary. Triggers on the stack.
You're okay with this, of course.
Any follow-up to be had? There's
oh,
not.
Wow. I like Grant's position here. And
tough
Azorius
not
Charm.
to.
I think I'd draw a card main phase here with this Azorius Charm.
And pass the turn back.
Again, just to hit land drops. Because you have Sinks of Revelation. Once you hit a few land drops, you're pretty much, putting the game away. The name of the game, my friend, is playing lands. That's what you got to do.
Nykthos going to come into play here. Not going to generate any mana just yet. LaCombe going to pay 2. Here comes Nash Zealot. It's not that Nykthos can generate a single mana.
I think you have to let this resolve so you don't get Stormbreath Dragon out of the game, and then Azorius Charm it on top of the library. Maybe the Burning Tree Emissary, rather. You have to let this resolve.
Yeah, I don't think this one is too troublesome right now.
No. And, I mean, if you're willing to let the Mogus resolve and deal you, it dealt him 5-6 damage this game, this is obviously an easy resolve.
Well, McGuffee's going to consider his options before he makes a move here.
You know what's funny?
Happen.
You know what's funny in this situation, as we mentioned prior to the match starting, is that Burning Earth is not a huge player in this matchup.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all.
Definitely the 2-color deck advantage, and he takes all the damage for a Revelation for 2.
So an overcost of Divination, going to get 2 life though, so 1 and 2. McGuffee's going to move up to 11 life. Quick untap for him. We'll see what cards he does draw. Supreme Verdict among them.
And I don't think he can actually Verdict here again. I think he's going to have to say go once again. He can play Detention Sphere if he wants, which is not a bad play too, because it does save you some life as well.
Yeah, of course. You just want to make sure that you don't get wrecked by Stormbreath Dragon. That's the one card that you are most scared of.
Right.
If you're McGuffee.
Yeah, I think you easily dispatch a Detention Sphere here. You have tons of cards. I think Grant is using his cards a little too conservatively and his life total a little too liberally here because, the red player has one goal, and that's to deal you 20 real quick here. And he's going to say go, so he's going to actually take even more damage here.
Well, as you mentioned, using your life total as a resource. Now, he might just be a little bit too conservative, though, as you mentioned.
Yeah, well, I mean, time will tell, of course. But using your life total as a resource is much easier when they're not playing mountains as well. Because there's definitely this deck of any deck has the most reach. And Mogus, Stormbreath Dragon, there's tons of things that just kill you.
Yeah, Hammer Porphyros also does a nice job.
Yeah, that'll do it too, yeah.
So you got 2 creatures coming across here. McGuffee's going to go down to 7, it looks like.
And if Jared's baited into playing another creature, which he's not, now this is a point where being burnt out is a real possibility. But we don't know really Jared's hand. I haven't been able to get a good glimpse of it. It could just be a bunch of nothing. So we'll find out. So Grant's thinking in a turn. And I think he has another Revelation, which is just an easy Revelation again. Yep, and he
so
will.
red for 3 up to 10. What is this?
So he's
quick tapping of mana.
And tapping 4. Warrior's Helix.
Oh my god, I think he's
dead. Burnt out.
Yeah.
And this is a example of...
Yep, and now Boros Charm, and that is going to do it. And he extends the hand immediately. So Jared LaCombe is going to win this match 2-1. And you talk about being conservative and not using your cards fast enough, and that's exactly what Grant McGuffee did. He ends the game with a Verdict, with a Counterspell, with Revelation, and all of these things he can use to actually end up winning the game. He ends up getting burnt out, and as you mentioned, just taking too much damage.
Yeah, I mean, there's 20 times throughout this match you got to make these decisions where I'm playing against mountains. It's not the same as you're playing against a green-based deck or you're playing against a white-based deck. You will get burnt out if your life goes too low. You know Jared's got a chock full of burn after board and with the Mogus in the main deck. And even Hammer, like you said, will just burn you out. So you need to use every card in your deck as a gain life spell. You Detention Sphere, even if you're going to verdict the turn before, you play Detention Sphere to gain 2 life.
Yep.
If you're going to verdict the turn before, use Azorius Charm to gain 2 life.
Yep.
You got to